Scene sequel structure is one of the greatest things I ever learned as a writer for handling prose and structuring my chapters. The only thing I dislike about it is calling it scene sequel for lexicon related reasons. So, I'm going to go with calling the parts of the scene proactive and reactive. Action/reaction works as well, but I found these alternative terms on Wikipedia and I wish to join in with those who endorse it. Anyway, semantics aside, I'll break this down as concisely and quickly as I can. The proactive part of a scene is all about trying to achieve a goal. In fact, there's three things you must keep in mind: goal, conflict, and outcome. For goal, we have what the POV character wishes to achieve. This can be small or large. I'll use my own work for a quick example. In chapter 15 of The Confessions of Cassidy Cain, Cassidy's goal is to recruit the mysterious thief Crow for a heist. The reason she can't just do it though is because of the conflict. The conflict is whatever opposition hinders the protagonist from just getting what they want, which they must then contend with. Contending with it must make up the middle section of a scene. In chapter 15's case, the first issue is that the plan Cassidy came in with won't be effective against Crow, since she doubts that he cares about his life. She adjusts to this by being straightforward, though this runs to the fact that he doesn't care about her alter ego and isn't interested in working with their team. She keeps pressing though, trying to play at his sympathies. Doing so leads to the outcome. Crow agrees to help her if she'll face him in what is basically strip poker and beats him. Cassidy absolutely hates this condition, which is another key to the outcome: disaster. The disaster is another name for the outcome. In fact, if you look up goal, conflict, outcome, you're more likely to find goal, conflict, disaster. The reason why is because ending the conflict in a way which keeps the protagonist off balance builds well into the next scene and shows the challenge the protagonist is dealing with. I personally like using yes but or no and here. For yes but, the POV character accomplishes their goal, but there's a cost for it or some new problem pops up because they accomplished their goal. For no and, the POV character fails at their goal and this failure results in a negative consequence or a problem which arises. I don't feel there must always be a disaster, but it often is better to have one of these of the two variants, at least until, say, near the end or whatever. Whatever happens, this leads well into the reactive part of a scene. The reactive part of a scene shifts focus to the protagonist's inner world. I love this phase, due to it tapping into the greatest strength of prose: immersion. Literature allows for greater immersion to a character than most other mediums, which is why I enjoy exploring a character's reactive phase. In fact, one good way to think about these: the proactive phase is the exterior, and the reactive phase is the interior. The reactive phase can be broken down into three parts: reaction, dilemma, and decision. The reaction is emotional, the dilemma is intellectual, a decision leads to the next action. This doesn't even have to be all that long either. I'll use an example from Confessions. Chapter 15 ends in a cliffhanger of yes but with Crow's challenge. Chapter 16 starts with Cassidy's reaction. I remained silent and still while contemplating how such nonsense wouldn't have ensued if I were male. This is the reaction, all about Cassidy's emotional response. One of the reasons why I picked this of all scenarios is because Cassidy would not be happy with it. He'd been presenting me with a different challenge, whereas someone else, a more sensible side of me, noted. Right there is where I transition into dilemma part. Dilemma itself can be broken down into three phases: review, analyze, and plan. In this case, I skip review since it's just happened, the readers don't need a recap. I go straight to analyze. Cassidy soothes herself while also thinking as it goes on. I likewise consider how I wouldn't have been in said position to begin with if not for my gender, so I couldn't curse it. It wouldn't make contending with him in such a manner any more ideal, but recognizing that the scenario wouldn't be any better or worse, simply different, provided comfort. Do you have a deck of cards? I asked. In this case, I skipped showcasing her deciding internally since speaking up and proceeding action-wise combined with everything else is her deciding. It shifts right back into Cassidy being proactive, so the reader doesn't need me to spell it out. I'll give another example from my own stuff from the actual card game, which showcases a much more review, analyze, plan, and decision parts. Up for a showdown now? He asked. I'll check. Too bad, cause I'm staying on the offensive. Call. I sealed my eyes and considered the playing field. 3 of a kind was a sufficient hand, and the chances of him possessing a suitably strong hand were slim. What's more, he had challenged me prior despite only possessing a single pair, so he could have been challenging regardless of card strength. Then again, part of me said, he was holding 2 divines. It wouldn't have been out of the question to conclude that I held only a pair, despite my attempt to disguise my hand's strength. Perhaps he had correctly assumed I didn't possess a strong hand and was pushing his advantage. If that were the case, he could have somehow lucked out with his last draw and held a dominating hand. Perhaps he was even relying on me underestimating him to lure me into battle. My grip on my cards tightened and my stomach dropped. Not accepting this challenge meant stripping either my shirt or pants. I gulped back a lump in my throat and reminded myself that stripping a little further wasn't the end of the world. I fold. Cassidy sealing her eyes is the reaction. She faces this challenge. Her immediate reaction is to remain calm and think. She reviews his actions so far in the game before shifting into analyzing everything during the dilemma part. In her case, she's weighing the options before making a clear decision at the end, which leads to her next action. That, in turn, plays out and leads into the next, creating an ebb and flow between the two. If you've never heard of this, you should give it a try with your writing. And if you want to thank anybody for all this, the origins go to Dwight V. Swine's Techniques of the Selling Writer, which came out in 1965. I thank him for this. I also thank everybody who's paid this knowledge forward, such as K.M. Weiland, who I first learned this from. I can say I benefited from it, and I hope that, by making this video, I can do my part in paying this knowledge forward too. Of course, I have other videos where I pay forward the knowledge I've collected. A couple of them should be popping up on the screen right now. If you're interested in seeing what else I have to offer, you're free to watch.